Hey kids, howdy, and welcome to another episode of Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. We're in the second week of October, so we're kind of rolling through a slightly quieter time. Has that been happening for over in your world, too?
I've had some change. I think I'm still feeling the last week's energy.
One of the things that I see on social media, right, is people are saying, well, when's it going to end? And when are we going to get some relief? And then if I talk about like October being less intense than September, I think sometimes people fantasize that that means it's
Yeah.
gone, right? Or that the planets get quiet and all of the intensity from last night disappears. But no, these planets are holding this pattern for 2 years, blah, blah, blah. It's a little bit of a dip in energy because of the shifts and changes, but it ain't like we're out of out of hot water.
Yeah. And you know what? It's like it's chill. It's not like super heightened dramatic change. So,
Okay, that's good.
yeah.
Lovely, lovely. There's also something nice at the end of October. There's some nice lineup of a grand order
Mm.
trine. We might do all right. And this week it's another sort of quiet week. We got a full moon. Mercury's going to change signs. But first, let's do a couple of questions. I was out of questions in my little list, so I went online and I just said, "Hey, give me your questions," not knowing that people would respond like crazy. I got way
Oh,
more than I could
wow.
handle. Yeah. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to zip through a bunch of these into a kind of lightning round. So Jill asks, my birthday is 9/25, so I'm considered on the cusp, I assume, of Virgo, but what does that mean and how does it affect characteristic traits or being a Libra? Well, the short answer is nothing. Cusp isn't real. It's something made up by the newspaper industry to sort of manage the differing dates of birthdays and the day that the sign changes, right? So they said, oh, well, if you're here, you might be on the cusp to sort of take place of the fact that they don't know exactly where the sun is for that particular birthday. Cusp is not a thing. Sorry, Jill. Sai asks, what does it mean to be born under a balsamic moon phase? I'll answer this in two ways. One way that I always look at a chart between the sun and the moon and say their relationship will describe how you come back to center after you've been knocked off. And a 45-degree angle, which is what the balsamic moon is, it's like mild, conflict. So you get over your conflicts in a kind of bumpy way, but you get there. In terms of the phase of the moon, this is a completion energy. Like it's a letting go time. This could be about coming into a life where the soul is wrapping up a karmic cycle or carrying wisdom from past lives, but it's definitely a quieter kind of life. Stephanie asks, I'm a Libra rising, and my chart has been described as upside down.
Upside
What does
down.
that actually mean? Yes, I love that. Upside down is a confusing moniker because there's no right side up or upside down. When you look at a chart, there is a top and there is a bottom, where the bottom 6 signs would be considered, and this is weird, the northern hemisphere, and the top 6 is the
Hmm.
southern hemisphere because of where we are in the solar system. So the bottom is about our relationship with self and the immediate environment. The top of the chart is about interacting with others, collaborating in the world, and relating to like large institutions. So a chart that has a whole lot of planets on the lower part of the chart means a life where there's much more focus on the individual journey than like mastering the outside world. Doesn't mean you can't be successful. You just got to master self. And sometimes that's called an upside down chart. Really, it just means focus on self. Tammy writes, I'm curious about the 13th zodiac sign. Like when the calendar changed to our modern version, what happened to the influencing energies of the lost sign? There was none. It was never influential, has nothing to do with astrology. A couple of weeks ago, I talked about this, where the stars in the sky were just billboards to describe the origin stories of the energy of each sign. But the stars don't impact us, and the 13th zodiac constellation has never had anything to do with Western astrology. Ooh, this was a fun one. Jesse writes, are full moons and blue moons falling on birthdays significant at all? Yes, they would. The birthday means you're in what's called the solar return. When the sun is aligned where the sun was when we were born, we're in a high level consideration of self. We call that the birthday, but it also in consciousness means a moment when you're very focused on who you are and who you're being. Full moon means that the power of the unconscious and transformative energies, and if it's blue, double that, is being funneled right into your sense of self. All full moons are release moments, but one that happens on your birthday could be kind of big and a little bit like a shift that you might not see the evidence from for a couple of years' time. This is a great one from Terry. I don't always share the personal details, but I have to with this one. Why do the planets affect our moods so much? Every time the moon goes void, I feel sad in my soul. And then she buried the lead. I am a 29-degree Pisces moon. Yes, honey. Pisces moon is about connecting to the vastness of what everything that's invisible, that I use the word unconscious for. The 30th degree is always the most masterful of the sign. And in this case, you as an individual are way more sensitive to energy than other human beings. And so, because of that emotional sensitivity, because of where your moon is placed, yeah, you're going to be impacted by the changing phases. And, void moons ask us to go within. And if your moon is in Pisces, your within is like way deep in there in a sort of abyss of frightening nothingness because Pisces connects us to that. In the spirit of coming out of eclipse season, Gwen writes, since we just got done with eclipses, what does it mean to have Virgo sun conjunct South Node? Well, that means, Gwen, that you were born under an eclipse. So here's how you know. Everybody, you want to find out if you were. The nodes of the moon both look like horseshoes. One is upside down, one is right side up. If your sun sign point is within like 12 degrees of one of those nodes, you were born under an eclipse. And the basic meaning of that is that eclipses are going to be moments in your life where big things happen. If we look back at when you got married or when you moved or when you changed a job or when you had a child, very likely it would be in an eclipse. So the last question is not one that I'm going to answer, but it's just the notion that the question most asked about was about the yod. And this is absolutely true about astrology and people. I'm not quite sure why, but everybody is fascinated about yods, having one in a chart, what they mean in transit. I've talked about this before, but clearly it merits another conversation of greater depth. So, in one of the very near future episodes, I'll be devoting the question section to all about the yod. Before I dive into the energy of the week, I just wanted to let you guys know that my level 2 intro to transits class has its second class on Saturday. It started last week. There's a third one on the following Saturday. Last week it was Mercury. This week it's Venus. Last class is Mars. Some people are actually getting this a la carte, which is possible. But I also am saying this, I'm sharing this not so much to encourage people to buy a seat. I'm sharing it because this completes my fundamental astrology school. Like everything you need to get started learning how to read your chart and how to work with the lunar cycle, how to work the sun, moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. It's there. I've got a couple of free ones that I'm going to throw on there in the next couple of months. But Even if you're just curious about one day studying astrology, head over to my website and go to the astrology school and check out the curriculum. So the week gets started off with a bang, right? It's our full moon in Aries. It hits tonight, so we're in it. We're building in that. If you're listening to this on Monday, before I get to that, though, I'm just going to give a kind of overview, sensation wise, what the personal planets are doing. I'm not going to go into great detail. This is everything you'll get on my Red Robe Astrology videos, or if you're a Daily Astro Alert subscriber, I'll be talking about each of these minor transits as they come. But just to give an overview, Mercury's agitated this week. Lots of sudden adjustments and general stress. So communication is not going to be clear, and there's likely to be more like free floating stress than less. Venus should be loving out loud this week, but not without some healing and lessons. That means she's interacting with Chiron and Saturn, but in a couple of wonderful, expansive love moments. Mars is going to bump up with Saturn, so we've got some delays and breakdowns during the week. At some point, the sun's going to in conjunct the North Node. So, in all of the minor, this is all very minor, in the minor stress of the week, somehow our conscious awareness is going to get an idea of like the next step to take or what the fork in the road ought to lead you to. So all of this is mild stuff, right? We're out of the big crashing waves for now, but I thought I'd give a little sense of this week before we dive into the full moon. All right, so we are in a full moon that peaks tonight at 8:47 p.m. Pacific time. So it's building all day and then will absolutely influence tomorrow quite a bit as well. Now, one of the things that is part of this full moon experience is going to take up our conversation before we get to the full moon itself. And that's what Mercury is doing inside of the energy of the full moon building. So less than 12 hours before the full moon at 9:41 a.m. Pacific time, Mercury will leave Libra and enter Scorpio. That ingress is playing a wild role in today's full moon. But first, let's just talk about the general, data about Mercury changing signs. Mercury in Scorpio allows us to like go deep. This is Pluto's ruling sign. It's the archetype of death and rebirth and all of the magic and alchemy that we go through as human beings. And so one of the things that happens with Mercury moving into this sign is about comfort with the darker qualities of communication and perception, a willingness to go a little bit deeper with revealing than you might normally. Scorpio invented secrets. And so Mercury is the voice. So there's an interesting relationship that we will all have to secrets starting today, which could go either way, right? It could be that you are someone who is naturally secretive or private in an overly intensified way, and Mercury and Scorpio might trigger that a little bit or bring it close to mind or put you in some awareness of that. And then the other side of the equation is this comfort and maybe even a need to go deep and transformatively into conversations that can change things. Certainly on an interpersonal level, this is a good transit, especially if you're, walking through a life with some conscious awareness. Because difficult conversations about really scary, intimate, private things is often the very thing that will get a connection past its, the bump that it's in. But those are scary conversations. Not just talking about intimate relationships, I'm talking about all relationships because the planet that guides how we move through them with our voices is entering this deep territory. In terms of like the outside world and how this might impact what's happening on the world stage, this is an energy that can help anybody out there in institution land who wants to keep some secrets, keep some secrets. Now we've got both Mercury and Mars in that sign. And so for the 3 weeks that Mercury's here, that's going to impact the ability of public communication, can include keeping things hidden and secret. Mercury will be in Scorpio for 23 days. That's longer than 3 weeks. Typically, Mercury moves through a sign in about 2.5 weeks, but he's slowing down. At the end of this month, in fact, he sort of hits his, not sort of, at the end of this month, he hits the retrograde shadow. We're not there yet. But it does mean that since we're close, Mercury's taking a little bit longer to move through Scorpio than he typically would. It's a little early to talk about this in depth, but the reason that Mercury's slowing down in Scorpio is because he will move into Sag, turn around and go retrograde, and return to Scorpio. And we're so far away from that moment in time that we're not worth talking about until we get there in a couple of weeks. But it does behoove all of us to just put a little mindful attention on how does Mercury changing signs and moving into Scorpio impact how you are thinking, how you are perceiving, what is happening in your world from the neck up over the next couple of weeks in this archetype, because we're going to return here. And if you want to know what the theme might be for you with regard to that piece of the retrograde, that we're going to move into Sag, but have to return for the value that Scorpio brings, like a second time, a second helping of that, it would be very good for when we get there for you to have a good sense of what the sign is, doing with your mind, with your voice. So, full moon in Aries tonight. So we always start with the sun. Where's the sun? What's the conscious awareness sort of lifting up and saying, consider this aspect of your humanity for this 4 weeks? And that's Libra. Venus ruled. Libra is where we find harmony and balance and peacekeeping. The idea of coming back to center is a Libra invention, but that includes the idea of coming back to center when the scales get tipped in an extreme way. Meaning you have no value in Libra's ability to keep you in balance and harmony, or bring you back to balance and harmony, if you're not getting pulled out of balance and harmony and need that consciousness to learn how to right yourself. I'm saying all of this in preparation for the sign that the moon is in, which is pure interruption, Aries fire. Now, this is a relationship full moon because Aries Libra is the relationship polarity. So this is a relationship sort of themed lunation because Aries and Libra represent relationship. Aries is self, Libra is other, and so we have a full moon in the signs of self and other. But we're on the Libra side, so our conscious awareness is, in fact, connected to love and relationship, because the conscious awareness is what we can know about in a full moon. Like, that's important. The juice is where the moon is, but it's operating in our unconscious. We can't know what's happening, but we set ourselves up for a powerful release by remembering where our awareness is starting from. So it's about love in your heart, the relationships that reflect you. For my money, it's about learning how to put the world as your beloved first before you connect with others in human form. And it embodies the principle of love is the overarching force in the universe that makes all things come to peace. So the Aries side of the equation is all fire, all movement, all startup. As the first sign of the zodiac, Aries' fiery startup includes the very idea of being alive. In fact, whether you describe it from the archetypal sense of once there was a primordial infinite nothingness where all possibility is, by the way, that's Pisces. There's an energy that jumps into the void and emerges in a bang of I am. That's Aries. You could call that the literal Big Bang, the Big Bang of the zodiac, and the start of the astrological new year. From our use of astrology on a personal level, Aries represents that we are born and that we are in a body. I talk a lot about Virgo in the body, just in case that confuses all y'all, but Virgo runs the body. Aries gave it to us. So this fiery, impulsive, move first, think later energy, when it's used well, is one of the most valuable, principles we can work with. It's like, I'll go. Like, who's in charge of you but you? So who can make you go but you? And the Aries energy is that which lives inside of all of us that's prepared to go first, to start up, to light the fire, no matter what the consequences, because you're not thinking about the consequences. Aries says we ask for forgiveness, not permission. Now, because every full moon is about releasing stuff, you're either going to be one of those people who needs more fire or needs to soften their fire. If relationship is in your world to create, this full moon could just as easily be the one where you drop the idea of using the startup energy to find a relationship and let it go. By the same token, it could be the cardinal energy that lets stuff go that allows you to step up into seeking a relationship. Most of y'all know whether you have to lose fire or gain fire. That's a pretty simple, I'm sitting here with you, Zoe. You need more, I need less. Do you want some of mine?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like that would be something intuitive, like whatever you're feeling inside.
Yeah, if you're listening to this, you know what I'm talking about. You have to. Otherwise, I don't think you'd be sitting in a podcast about astrology. So that's the broad strokes release mechanism of this full moon. Now, Mercury's doing so much complicated stuff in this full moon, and then the next day, I don't know where to start. You know what? In the spirit of the questions, I'll start with a yod.
Okay.
A yod is a three-pointed triangle where the blunt end has to have two planets in a sextile. That's the motor of the yod. And you can think of the yod as like a boat navigating us into our future. So the back two planets give the thrust, and the pointy planet describes what's generating the movement. And of course, in this case, it's Mercury, which means it's directly connected to all of us at the individual collective level. All of our voices are experiencing leaving the peaceful, harmonious place of Libra and diving into the depth and intensity of Scorpio. And the moment Mercury moves into Scorpio, he's going to, in conjunct Neptune, and it'll take another day for him to in conjunct Uranus, but that will happen on Tuesday. So that's the shape of a yod. Picture in your mind's eye, if you're not driving, Uranus and not only Neptune, but Saturn is there. So he's in Pisces. They're close enough to have the teacher's part of this. And that sextile is about allowing for sudden change and inspiration to come out of nowhere, to trust that unexpected things come and we can work with them to our benefit if we don't let them knock us off balance too much. Mercury and Scorpio would be better at handling juicy material that would otherwise knock us off balance, but we're in a state for the next 3 weeks to receive darker, more intense, ideas and communication and perception. The in conjunct with Neptune, the one that's immediate, is about trusting that spirit will guide you more than rationality. That if you're on a path that isn't serving you in terms of figuring out where to go next, Neptune is saying, get off that path and get onto the path of asking your inner inspiration, what's coming next, to tap into some kind of a spiritual practice that allows you to be guided. So because it's all one mechanism, this is the essence of the yod, that if we allow ourselves to be willing to go into scarier interactions that require us to step up with a strong voice, we will be much better at fielding the sudden, unexpected twists and turns that are coming. And we'll put our spiritual practice right where it needs to be to help us move forward a little less encumbered by the baggage of fear or resistance that we might have been carrying around with us for the last who knows how long. The inconjunct from Mercury to Uranus hits and is exact as we're sleeping between Monday and Tuesday tonight. So you might not sleep all that well. Then right around 7:30 a.m. tomorrow, Pacific time, Mercury's going to square Pluto. This is interesting because now Mercury's in Pluto's sign, right? So the square has a little less blatant disruption and a little more sort of our minds bumping up against breakdown, change, frightening stuff, and impacting us somehow. Squares, Stephanie Azaria calls squares stepping stones, meaning you got to get from one side of the river to the next, and there are stones that you can walk on, but they're irregularly placed, they're covered with moss and slippery, and some of them are under rushing water. So you have to be very careful, but you must get across the river. Must. So you can think of that river in a bigger way being us having to navigate all of the changes that are going on right now. And this full moon says, well, we have to cross the river, even if we fall in. So I'll speak about this from the value of it in a full moon release, that the more you sort of stick your little, paws into the unconscious and rattle it around a little bit, the more you're sort of getting into territory where something has to be integrated in the world of power and authority and shrinking back from power. So if the full moon just says, release whatever is keeping you from either moving more powerfully or moving too fast, and this is a moment where what we're moving through is this crazy shift and change in the world. Buried inside this full moon is like a little pill to take about how to be better in that experience. And Mercury's showing that to us by pointing out the exit road, right? That's the nature of a yacht. It's like an exit off the freeway, only because it's two of them. At the same time, it's an exit that's supported by the winds of fate. And so, as I described that inconjunct a few minutes ago, you want to be, considering that in your mind's experience. And then the square to Pluto just says, nobody's going to escape the difficult experience of having to press against power that would oppress you and step up and speak into that in order to move powerfully forward. Now, if it sounds like I'm talking about political activism, of course I am. But I'm also talking about the conversation you're having on an ongoing basis with that neighbor who keeps harshing your driveway. The thing you haven't said yet that will push your relationship over the edge, but now is the time.
So just take the step.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Now, Mercury won't come back this far into Scorpio when he goes retrograde, but back to what I was asking all y'all to do in these couple of days this week to get acclimated to this energy and see how it's impacting your thoughts and perceptions. And know that when we go into Sagittarius and we'll have the the sort of elusive thought that we are ready to like move out into the world and disseminate all we've learned in a Sagittarian style, Mercury will say, nope, not yet. You're still bypassing, you're still getting too scattered instead of finding out what's in the depths of you to keep you more focused. And that retrograde will come back into Scorpio, replicating the energy that really starts with this full moon. I think it's interesting that Venus, the planet of love, is hanging around with the south node of the moon in the like days right before the full moon. Any south node transit is to be interpreted as somehow excavating out issues and patterns and storylines from the past that are ready to be sort of released. Right? The full moons make the release happen, but if your south node isn't being touched, you have to wait a few months until when the septic tank dude comes to, you know, take all the shit away. But with Venus crossing the south node in the last like 3 or 4 days, we have the power of love helping us know in a felt way what our hearts need for release, right? That's going to be valuable to us in not mental awareness, but emotional intelligence. And know that in not too long, about a little over a week, Venus is going to oppose Saturn. So there's actually a lesson coming just past this full moon that's about making sure we're doing right by ourselves with, the love we're receiving, asking for what we need, being more open to receive love that comes when you usually push it away. Any sort of like wounded pattern around giving or receiving love is healable with Venus in the healing sign of Virgo. So both the conjunction with the South Node last week and the opposition to Venus that comes next week, the heart is just as involved as the mind is in this full moon. So it's like a full picture release. Start any ritual you do by focusing on the balance and harmony first. Then identify what Aries consciousness really has to be released for you and focus on that. And then trust that as Mercury moves out from here, Venus too, we will benefit down the line by effort and energy we put in to ritualizing release now. The last thing I want to talk about is kind of the good news. And it's the good news for now and also the end of October. And of course, it involves Jupiter. Jupiter in Cancer is exalted. It's his favorite place to be, other than maybe his home sign. In the lunation, he's forming a loose trine with Saturn and the north node of the moon. Like, those two aren't close enough together to really be conjunct anymore. They're too far apart, the north node and Saturn. But even I blur the lines of like when something is precise when it's falling under a lunation, right? So it's precise to the lunation that our capacity to manifest and have our heart's desire come into form is very ripe and open during this full moon, which means it's part of the whole month, the whole lunar cycle. Jupiter in a trine with Saturn is about balancing the sort of have-tos and get-tos. What's the discipline, structure, and responsibility going to look like? And then equal access to the joy and expansion that you get to enjoy from creating powerful structures. The trine from Jupiter to the North Node is a little less intense because it's past us, so it's already in its separation period, but it's there good enough for the girls I date talking about this full moon, that also things that we let go of earnestly now get funneled right into Jupiter's capacity to help us manifest our heart's desires. And at the end of this month, there's a stunning grand water trine being created, led by Jupiter. You'll have to keep tuning in to find out about that. But for the moment, just honor this full moon with as much sort of fiery intensity and intention that you can, and understand that Venus and Mercury will carry some interesting consciousness through to the end of the lunar cycle, and that we're also building towards this really yummy manifestation vortex that comes at the end of the month. Have at it.
Did you know that Michael has a daily astro alert? If you enjoy hearing the weekly astrology, you might like knowing more about each day. When you subscribe for the daily astro alerts, you'll get an in-depth explanation of the day's astrology sent right to your email. Subscriptions are only $10 a month, or you can purchase the yearly subscription at the reduced price of $100. To subscribe, head over to michaellennox.com. All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. This week we have an email and dream from Shea. Or Shay? It's just Shea. Anyways, the email says, Dear Dr. Michael, Zoe, and Penelope, I'm a longtime listener. I love the Penelope shout out.
Oh my God, me too.
I'm a longtime listener and have been a student of the esoteric since childhood. I have recurring nightmares, night terrors, as well as prophetic dreams. Acknowledge that some in the astrology community do not align with the 8-8 Lion's Gate, but if the ancient Egyptians celebrated it and aligns with the Great Pyramids, I'm here for it. You'll see why she mentions that.
But listen, hey, in all fairness, I can buy that. Like, that's beautiful. Like, that's someone knowing their relationship to something. I still stand by what I stand by, but I don't negate Shea's experience. I celebrate it. It's kind of like free speech. Like, it's like, I don't agree with you, but committed to you having that experience, especially if your body shows an impact. Yay, have at it. I can't wait to hear how this ties into a dream. Yay.
Okay. In this dream, I live across the street from one of the children I used to babysit for. I live 20 minutes away in real life. She was left alone in a ranch-style home and was on the front steps. I noticed there was no car in the driveway, so I went over to ask if she was okay. The child in real life is 6 and was so in this dream. I calmly asked Monica if she was okay. She said yes, that she had been taking a break from class. I said, what class? She showed me a Zoom class on a laptop. Suddenly, a car comes ripping up the driveway, and this very anxious woman is yelling, Monica, it's time to go, honey. It is not Monica's mom, aunt, or grandmother, but Monica says bye to me, then scampers off to the woman's car. The woman isn't impressed that I was there, but takes off without saying anything to me. As I go back up to Monica's house to shut the front door, a huge lion, think Aslan from the C.S. Lewis books, appears in front of me. I wasn't afraid of the lion, just in awe of the aurora borealis colors and the cosmic stars that make up the form of the lion. The lion was both solid and see-through, kind of like a Patronus in Harry Potter.
Love that.
Suddenly, the lion put his head between its 2 front legs and looked up at me, and then proceeded to get the zoomies out in the yard. That's when I woke up. Let's see. She adds a little bit about her astrology and then says, I have had previous dreams that I live in Monica's town, but this is the first time I've seen her in my dreams. This is definitely the first time I've seen that lion.
Now, of course, if Shay was here, the first question I would ask would be, what was going on with you at 6?
Right.
Right? It might seem, intuitive to think, well, it's Monica at 6, but it ain't Monica's dream. It's your dream.
Right.
And it does connect to childhood because it's, even if the distance is different, it's still where she used to live. You used to babysit. Like there's that connection. So we know it's about your past as well as the image of a kind of, on one hand, disenfranchised, sort of outcasted kid sitting on the porch, not at home, parents not home, and there's nothing offered. That, offered in terms of information. It's like, what's up? It's like, it's not like that scenario is the final scenario. But when I think about it, it does seem very disconnected from everything: home, parents. Then when there is movement for Monica, it's not familiar to Shea. That's interesting too, that there's this like overarching thing rising up for me that says that sort of exit that Monica makes in the car that doesn't seem recognizable to our dreamer has to be reflecting something about either what happened at 6 that was a defense against that, what happened at 6 that was the problem itself of being sort of led by strangers, meaning parents and family that don't maybe know you in a air quotes sort of way. Because she's not here, I don't know. I know that if this were my dream, because I wasn't raised to be connected to my gifts, it would, be a very different, interpretation. But the fact, Shea, that you do come through that, how should we call it, availability for mysticism, that too has to play something in why Monica leaves in a strange sort of way. Now, we know that this 6-year-old figure is trying to learn something, right? She's in a class. That suggests to me that Shea may be dreaming about either things she's learning and discovering about impact from childhood experiences, or maybe needs to. I mean, I don't know what kind of a Zoom class the average 6-year-old is going to take, but as a dream image, always when there's classes or learning or teaching, then we interpret that as a moment of discovery that comes from sort of a deliberate look at something. So there's something interesting to me that this child is trying to learn something, but taking a break. I mean, I'm spitballing here, but it might even be that Monica being on a break from class rather than attending to it might have been the very invitation that Shia needed to cross the street, right? She didn't see a child learning something. She saw a child disenfranchised. It's important to honor that Monica says she's okay and willingly goes off into the car. So Shia is witnessing something that has to occur or that is in the natural order of things to occur. But now she has to know for herself, based on her 6-year-old life, whether that natural occurrence is a new way of traveling or healing, or the natural occurrence that something difficult sort of happened in childhood that was part of her dharma, whether it was, yummy or awful. What happens, happens, and then it's our job to steward it. And so while I don't feel that without Shia here that I have like an outrageously specific connection to Monica and, the car, I've done my best to sort of say it's about this kind of a young conflict that leads to the most beautiful description of an animal totem I think maybe I've ever heard in a dream. Lion is about leadership and charisma and the fire of strength and benevolence. Certainly in astrology, that is so. The quality of Leo as leader is that he knows to embody loving, warm leadership, not patriarchal, horrible leadership. Because she mentioned the Lion's Gate, then we have to add a kind of like reward, if you will, for all of the mystical willingness and the explorations she has done, right? She set me up as the hearer of the dream to be in consideration of a mystical moment that not everybody buys into, but is definitively connected to power, leadership, Leonian strength. So that counts. We don't dismiss what someone says or how they write or what they say about the dream. That's as rich as an interpretable material as the dream is. So the imagery is stunning. Colors floating might be one thing that what phrase that Shia could have used to describe what she saw, but she specifically talked about the aurora. The aurora borealis then is like a global connection to like mysticism that's very collective, because what the aurora is evidence for us of our cosmic motion. Right? The sun is pumping out light and warmth. We are spiraling through space at 67,000 miles, an hour. And just like all binaries, ones and zeros, the aurora is a direct reflection of Mother, Father, God. Being, the mother is Earth and the moon. She's Gaia. She is the mother goddess. The sun is the father god, and the transcendent third that they create is us. And the aurora is our evidence on Earth that we're in a kind of magical mystery engagement that is us being the birthed transcendent third that's created by the sun and the moon. That's big. Now, this head puts its head between its front legs. Read me exactly what she says about that.
Yeah, put its head between its two front legs and looked up, and then proceeded to get zoomies.
Okay, first of all, that's a gesture of supplication, right? I've seen that posture in dogs. They stretch and they look up, but this is a dream and it's a lion, right? And it's a magic lion, right? But so we interpret that the lion in the dream isn't roaring or showing its power. It's bowing.
Mhm.
It's bowing to her, and then it's showing how excitable that is. How much joy is available when you connect to that energy, hence the zoomies.
Yeah.
Because Shia has had a lifetime of mystical orientation, she's not afraid of her medicine, right? So the lion shows up. It's not frightening. It's not like a lion in the jungle because we're just meeting the lion energy. It's the highest level of, lion with a capital L transformed and, magic, which again is a testament to her readiness to connect to this kind of magic and like, have at it, honey. I love this dream.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the Daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.